Welcome to the Dr. G Show. Today we're doing part 4, which is episode 195, and we're talking basically, of course. And what we mean by that is, of course, we should be sick. Of course, we should be chronically sick, right? We should be dying prematurely. We should be the biggest, fattest, dumbest country with the most anxiety and depression in the world. That's Murika, right? And so often we get caught up in this idea that things are genetic, but only 1% of disease is genetic. 99% is what do you eat, drink, breathe, rub on your skin, how do you stress. So, most people don't know since 1960, we have basically taken most of the stuff that you eat and drink and breathe, rub it on your skin, and even wear, and made it out of coal tar, which causes cancer and learning disorders and all this kind of stuff, for greater profitability. So things changed, but we didn't tell anyone. So then you have a whole generation of sudden epidemics that start. So we know in autoimmune, MS, lupus, chronic fatigue fibromyalgia, 1984, poof, like this, right? Uterine fibroids, 1960, poof. Infertility, poof, same thing. Like, we cause these sudden epidemics, and then because everybody's falling apart, and nobody's talking about why, we just kind of accept it, and we end up in this kind of like Skinner's box where everybody's just sick and tired of being sick and tired, but they don't know they're causing it. So one of the things I do in my practice is I do functional lifestyle medicine, which is know how the body works, know what we do to mess it up, teach people stop messing it up, right? So we've been talking about drinks and the ingredients and why they should make you sick. We talked about some, pesticides and some other stuff last time. We talked about some food. So today I want to kind of end with a few kind of like comfort foods, right? So with comfort foods, let's start with bread. Oh my God. Everybody loves their bread, right? So if you guys did not know this, there is 3 major proteins of bread. There's more, but 3 major ones. One of those is glutenomorphin. That's morphine. Bread has morphine in there. And that morphine is 20 times more addicting than morphine as a street drug. The same as dairy, right? Dairy's morphine, bread's morphine. That's why people call it comfort food. That's why it's always cake and ice cream and grilled cheese. And that's why you always put those two together, bread and butter, because you got morphine and life sucks, and sometimes you just want to be doped up with some morphine, right? Once you get rid of bread and dairy and you're just like, hey, I can just be happy, that's a whole different world now, right? But most people are not aware that they are just food drug addicts. And the crazy thing in the brain is that when you do morphine as a drug, it actually shrinks your dopamine. So then the internal part of your brain that regulates happiness and mood, it also diminishes, which is okay. Then we just need more dope. So people do more crack and then more meth and then more heroin, and then it downregulates your own production of that dopamine, and then eventually you can't do enough to even be happy, and you just end up overdosing, right? That's why that happens. But does it happen the same way for food? Yeah. Your body doesn't care where the morphine is coming from. So morphine is morphine to the body. It doesn't care. So that's where you see people that start out with a little bit of sugar. Next thing you know, they're just like, I just need like a little bit more sugar and a little bit more sugar. And the next thing you know, they're rolling up their arm and like taking a tube, tying it off, right? Getting a good vein for that sugar. So there's no difference between drug addicts and food addicts. It's the same thing with the brain. One's just more acceptable. So let's talk about some comfort foods, you food drug addicts. So what about Wonder Bread? One of the things I learned about Wonder Bread was I read this article that said if you make Wonder Bread in places like Singapore, you could get 15 years in prison and $500,000 fine. To which I thought, what the hell's in Wonder Bread, right? And there's this great book. We'll go through Twinkies, but there's this great book called Twinkie Deconstructed. And this guy did a very non-judgmental kind of thing. So the story goes he was at the beach with his daughter, and she was eating some popsicle. And she was like, "Dad, what is this ingredient?" And I think it was polyethylene glycol or something like that. And the dad was like, "I don't know." And then he started thinking about, like, what the hell am I feeding my child? Like, I don't even know what this means, and yet she's eating it, and I'm responsible for her health. Maybe I should figure this out. So he decided to take the most artificial product we have, right? And that's Twinkies. And so he went through the label and went to every company that makes that ingredient. So he went to a company that made each one of those and just kind of said, how do y'all do this? Right? And that's what the whole book is like, how do you make this? How do you make monoglycerides? How do you make diglycerides? How do you make this? Right? So almost every chapter I wrote petroleum. Turns out you're just eating and drinking petroleum for greater profitability. So when we look at these ingredients, that's a good book to start with. So back to the bread causing that, right? That's crazy. But most people don't know that there's two different food systems. That which you sell to the United States and that which you produce for the rest of the entire world. Our food is not the same as the rest of the world, and our food is banned in most countries. Like, we literally have signs that say, do not feed the animals this food because it can kill them. Oh, but my kids can eat it. I can eat it, right? Immune system is immune system, physiology is physiology, right? So, a really good little kind of story. I remember some of you guys have went with me to do adventures in the Wichita Mountains in just outside of Lawton, Oklahoma. And there's a prairie dog village there. And the prairie dog village, I noticed they don't have it up there anymore. But it used to have this sign that said, don't feed the prairie dogs your processed food. It lowers their immune system and they will die. So this kid is sitting there eating a sandwich, right? White bread, probably fake cheese and some glued together meat. And he starts taking the bread and he's tossing it to the prairie dogs, which is awesome, right? They all run towards it and they eat it, and then the dad was like, whoa, son, he like pointed at the sign and it said, don't feed the animals your processed food. It'll impair their immune system and they'll die. So the kid goes, oh, I'm sorry, Dad. And then he keeps eating the sandwich. And I am like cracking up. Like, that's back before I knew any of this stuff. And I still saw how messed up that is. This food is so bad that we care more for the prairie dogs than that dude did for his kids. For his kid, right? Now, granted, the kid's a little snotty-nosed punk. Maybe, no, I'm just kidding. But that's crazy. And I was that same kind of parent. Like, I never even thought about that stuff. When I first started, I had my first daughter, I'm a doctor. I'm like feeding my kid mac and cheese and fish sticks and like corn on the cob. And I'm just like, I'm a good dad. That's like all the parts of a meal. Like, that's balanced. Man, I'm doing this parenting thing right. And then I learned all this stuff, and then I was like, oh my God. And now my kids eat like tofu and sushi and all kinds of interesting stuff. So, they have a whole different life than I did as a kid, where my home cooking was hamburger helper, mac and cheese, ketchup sandwich. If you guys were ghetto enough, I grew up eating ghetto stuff like ketchup sandwiches, and then like all you had is Wonder Bread, so you put some butter on there, sprinkle some sugar, and then maybe some cinnamon, and that's like your food. Like, so, you turn your toaster sideways and toast that bad boy up. Like, that was real food when I was a kid. Like, it was pretty bad. So I remember my sister used to make Chef Boyardee pizzas. And oh my God, as a kid, I was just like, wow, that's amazing. She's making this from scratch. But it's from the box. So I loved it, though. I loved when she made that. It's so gross now. All right, so why would bread get you prison time in another country? And I alluded to that earlier. There's two different food systems: that which you sell to the U.S., that which you sell to other countries. So the ingredients we have in the U.S. disrupt your thyroid, and it makes people sick, fat, and dumb. Your whole entire life, your whole body, every single cell in your body, all 50 to 100 trillion cells, they all are controlled by that free T3, the bioactive part, the 0.4% of your total thyroid production. That runs everything. Your basal metabolic rate, how easy it is to lose weight, how strong you get, how energetic, alert, everything is controlled by this. But things like bromine, chlorine, and fluorine will bind to the same receptors as iodine, and it basically makes your labs look great and you feel awful. And so every other country in the world except for Murika is socialized medicine. Socialized medicine says, if you let companies make you sick for profit, we're going to cover all your healthcare costs. So in America, who gives a shit, right? You lose all your savings in 2 weeks at the hospital, great. Go live under a bridge, live in a box. This is America. But every other country in the world is like, hey, don't worry, we'll cover all your healthcare costs. They can't afford sick, fat, dumb people. So they ban most of the stuff that we eat all the time. So they don't have to deal with chronic illnesses like we do, right? So that's where knowing this stuff becomes even more vital for us, right? And it might seem overwhelming, but the reality is that not everything causes cancer. Everything that we add that causes cancer. But there's tons of stuff that does not cause cancer. If you look at last time when we talked about, cilantro has 30 pesticides. There's 64, but 30 of them. Half the pesticides that are still on that cilantro by the time you get it from the store disrupt your hormones. Should you have hormone problems? Absolutely. All the canned goods have bisphenol A in there. That is one of the most estrogenic chemicals that messes up our hormones. So you should have messed up hormones. And then you add on the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and then it's just like, yeah, we should all be sick, fat, dumb, and anxious and depressed. Murika, right? So let's talk about Wonder Bread. Let's talk about 15 years in prison kind of bread. So, unbleached, enriched flour. Well, that's quite nice, right? It's unbleached, so this is the good stuff. It's enriched because they spend a mile taking out all the nutrients in this gigantic factory, and then they add in synthetic ones back, or genetically modified derived ones. So, the wheat flour, there's different types of wheat, and the wheat that we use since 1950 is, I think, Triticale. And Triticale grew 6 foot tall, and we said, what if we could make it smaller and it'll take less water? What if we could take a little bit of gluten and make a lot of gluten? Let's make a plant that never existed and make some real money. And literally, 1950, when they did this, that's when you saw that sudden epidemic of IBS, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, irritable bowel. So wheat flour in there is so kind of modified that it actually causes lots of gut problems. And then if you look at malted barley that's in there, it has gluten in there. The niacin and the vitamins and stuff, those are just synthetically derived from genetically modified gut bacteria. Has water in there. Well, hallelujah. That's pretty good, right? Except the water has fluoride and chlorine in there. And so we drink recycled poo water. So there's poo bacteria in there. So we use bleach to kill that. That bleach is a free chlorine. That free chlorine binds to your tyrosine and it mimics the iodine on your receptor. And then you become hypothyroid and you become sick, fat, and dumb. The fluoride does the same thing. Fluoride is so much worse. Fluoride is 1934. They said fluoride is more neurotoxic than lead poisoning, right? Now, if you fed your kid lead or let them chew on weights when they fish, you would go to jail and lose your kid. But if you let them drink it in the water, it's fine. If you let them put it on their teeth, it's fine, right? So, the fluoride that's in there is horribly, horribly neurotoxic. I think I switched lead and fluoride in there. But you couldn't do that to your kid like with the lead, but fluoride's even more neurotoxic than lead poisoning. So water, which probably disrupts your thyroid. And then we have high fructose corn syrup. So years ago at Harvard, I figured out why all these patients had fatty liver disease without alcoholism or hepatitis viruses. And that's because we created something called non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, NAFLD, which leads to non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, which is cirrhosis of the liver. So we literally can cause cirrhosis of the liver and damage the liver so much that it causes fatty liver with just things like corn syrup. Murika. That book, when we first started this series, I read from 1907, and it talks about how high fructose corn syrup was being created and how it messes up your health. So that was a textbook for kids. Hey, Brianna's here. She has a close friend that suffers with IBS if she drinks city water. Yeah, I mean, it's like an antibiotic. It's going to kill all your good bacteria off, too. So, and you know what's funny is, we had a patient one time that they're hypothyroid, which is typically really easy to fix. And then the patient was doing great, got off their meds, wonderful, and then was like, oh my God, I'm feeling so messed up. Let's make an appointment. And I was like, what's going on? And they're like, oh my, and just all of my symptoms have come back. Well, if it's chronic, it's something that you're chronically doing, something you're eating, drinking, breathing, rubbing on your skin. What changed? So nothing changed, doing super great. But then as we worked through stuff, she said, wait, there's a letter from the city. The letter from the city said, don't drink the tap water. There's too much fluoride and it'll mess up your thyroid. So, awesomeness, right? Well, so then we have yeast. Yeast for the bread is usually baker's yeast. And baker's yeast is Saccharomyces cerevisiae. And that is one of the most allergenic ones. So we do these food sensitivity tests. We test 184 different foods. We look at your blood's immune system and does it attack that at a mistake. And yeast is probably the most common thing to be on there. So wheat and dairy, and of course yeast. So if that person's eating high fructose corn syrup bread, they should have fatty liver disease, and then all their systems start to fail. But that yeast actually should cause inflammatory reactions. Now that means for one person that could be joint pain, for another migraines, for someone eczema, someone Crohn's, right? And then it has calcium carbonate. It's only 22% absorbable, so that's a little bit of nothing anyways. But it has soybean oil in there. The soybean oil is made from soybeans, and the soybean pesticide just got banned last year because it was so toxic that it destroys everything. But the EPA said, although we're banning it, if you still have some, keep on using it. It's so deadly that we're going to ban it, but, I mean, use what you got, right? we don't get too crazy here. So, the soybean oil uses a pesticide that is banned now, let alone it's genetically modified, which is a whole mess. Then there's wheat gluten, and again, gluten is glue that's in the wheat. So this gluten is the most allergenic, right? So we said the yeast, the wheat, the dairy, those are the most allergenic. So we have two of the most allergenic ones in here. And then we have some salt. That's okay. Probably not sea salt. And then dough conditioners, because, when you make bread at home, you got to use conditioners. And so that's sterile lactylate. And then calcium sterile lactylate. And then monoglycerides. Now, monoglycerides and diglycerides that you see in those foods. Now, that usually means fatty acids. But now they make them out of petroleum. So in that book, Twinkie Deconstructed, we can just make monoglycerides and diglycerides from petroleum products. And then calcium peroxide. That sounds good. Calcium iodate. That does not sound great, but it's okay. Datum. DATEM, which sounds like it's probably going to be sketchy, but it's not really that sketchy of an ingredient. Now, ethoxylated mono and diglycerides. So again, Now we're back to petroleum fatty acids. Enzymes, ascorbic acid, which again is not vitamin C, it's a synthetic derived one. Now it has vinegar in there, so that's acetic vinegar, which acetic vinegar is from genetically modified corns, which just also probably means there's a little bit of glyphosate or pesticides in there too. Then we have yeast extract. Now we said yeast before, that's that Saccharomyces cerevisiae. That just causes a lot of inflammatory stuff. The yeast extract that we're looking at now, that is something that gives a little bit of flavor called umami, and that is MSG. And MSG, according to MIT, they published studies that says it causes instant brain cell death the minute it crosses the blood-brain barrier. There's a study from 2010 that said that MSG, even including yeast extract, decreases brain neurite growth by 8,000%. So, 8,000%. So, we said before that the average American, by the time they become overweight, has a 4% smaller brain. By the time they become obese, they have up to an 8% smaller brain. And this is why. It's literally preventing brain cells to grow, and it's killing cells that already exist there. So think of brain fog, memory loss, that kind of stuff. And then modified cornstarch. So that's genetically modified corn, which then means means glyphosate or Roundup. And then we have sucrose, which is a fake sugar. Then we have sugar, and then the sugar is from genetically modified beets, from South Dakota probably. Soy lecithin, which is then now soy lecithin, that's genetically modified soy. So then we're back to that banned pesticide. The other thing is they use hexane gas to process soy. So most soy is processed with hexane, which is horribly toxic. And they get most of it out, but some of it's still in there. So, nice. And then they got some vitamin D in there because, of course, we can't go out in the sun because God hates Americans, so he uses the sun to cause cancer because he hates our freedom. That's why if you go to other countries, they have lower cancer rates because less freedom. And then we have soy flour. So again, more genetically modified soy and more banned pesticides. Ammonium sulfate, which ammonium is toxic. That's wonderful, huh? You know, that book from 1907, it warned about ammonium in your breads too. And then it has calcium sulfate, which then sulfates and sulfites, they can cause all kinds of like gut problems and brain problems and irritation and inflammatory conditions. So, when you say, well, I'm just eating a little Wonder Bread, what could be the harm, right? I mean, it's literally full of ingredients that should make you feel awful. It should cause Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, IBF, eczema, psoriasis, brain fog, memory loss. You should feel awful. And it should mess up your thyroid, and it should make you sick, fat, and dumb. So, questions about that? And you know, when you look at other breads, it's basically the same, right? Now, let's go. If you guys have questions about stuff or you have questions about products or something, let me know. We can look up stuff too, right? It's a nice thing about the live show. Those of you guys that watch this offline, well, you can't ask those questions. I guess you could, but... Alright, so let's look at a Twinkie. So that book is Twinkie Deconstructed. That you got to look at that book. So, I've never had a patient ever ask me, what about Twinkies? I think we all know it's bad, right? But let's look how bad it is. So, enriched bleached flour. So now this one, as opposed to our Wonder Bread wasn't bleached, right? So now it uses chlorine that's in the water, but this one uses straight up thyroid disrupting bleach. Bleach. I mean, who doesn't think adding a little bit of bleach to your food could be all that bad? I mean, you know, it's just a little bleach. I love when I had a patient the other day said, well, it's just a little toxicity. I was like, and every single thing that you eat, drink, breathe, rub on your skin, and wear, yeah, just a little bit of bleach. If I put a little bit of bleach in your kid's food, are you gonna be okay with that? Like a little bit of paint thinner? No, you ain't gonna be cool with that. But a company does it, and it's just like, oh, it's fine. Is it banned in other countries? Can we feed it to animals? No. Okay, well, it's probably okay for us, though. All right, so same kind of like little nutrients that are in there. Water, which then has more chlorine and fluoride, which is neurotoxic, messes up your thyroid. Sugar, which again is genetically modified beets, which then means glyphosate or Roundup. Corn syrup, which means non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And now all your processes go slow. Medications end up becoming very toxic, lots of side effects. And it's genetically modified, and then you have Roundup. And then high fructose corn syrup in there. So it's got sugar, corn syrup, and high fructose corn syrup. It's got all of them. This is like a very inclusive product. So high fructose corn syrup. So again, fatty liver disease and cirrhosis of the liver. All right, so now it has partially hydrogenated vegetable oil. So what the hell does that mean? Well, hydrogenated, basically, if you have a double bond, then the oil's a liquid. So like, canola, or rapeseed oil, or cotton oil, they're liquids, right? Olive oil. But if you can break that bond and put two hydrogens on there, well, then it's a solid at room temperature. So when you see things like hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated, that means they broke that bond. The problem with this is that creates trans fats, and trans fats only destroy your heart in a country where you're 1 out of 2 for heart disease, and women are more likely to have heart attacks than men now. So probably not a good idea. Now, we ban trans fats, but they still will have trans fats if it's a low enough amount. So that vegetable oil then is soybean, which is genetically modified and uses a pesticide that is banned. Cottonseed, which is one of the most genetically modified, one of the most heavily pesticide-ridden products we have. And then we have canola. It's not organic, so it's genetically modified rapeseed oil called Canadian low acid. And that's where they get that from. Hey, Brianna says the issue is that people think that the government wouldn't allow this in our food system. And that's literally what I used to say. I used to be the opposite of me now. Like, I used to tell people, oh, that's bullcrap. The FDA would not ban that, or would not approve stuff that's toxic to you. That's crazy. And then it was like, oh, and then I was super wrong, and I was a jerk for telling people the wrong answer all those years, That's a good point. So lots more genetically modified oils, highly inflammatory oils, so you should have more inflammation, more arrhythmias, more heart attack, more stroke, more clotting, more hypertension, right? And then it has whole eggs. Well, that sounds wonderful. So whole eggs that are inflammatory because they feed the chickens corn, and corn is high omega-6 fatty acids, which then is going to increase your likelihood of more pain, more inflammatory conditions, more heart attack, more stroke, more hypertension, and irregular heartbeats. Who would think of their Twinkie causing irregular heartbeats, right? Then we have dextrose, and we're back to genetically modified corn and Roundup. Then it has soy lecithin, so now we're back to hexane, genetically modified pesticides. Leavening and pyrophosphate, okay. Baking soda, that's okay. Cornstarch, genetically modified corn with Roundup. Monocalcium phosphate, that's all right. Now it has whey protein in here. So now this has wheat and dairy in there. And that whey protein is the most allergenic along with our wheat and our yeast. So this should cause all kinds of horrible problems. That whey will cause IBS, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, eczema, psoriasis, allergies, joint pain, migraines, all that kind of stuff. And then we have modified cornstarch, which is, God, just like 20 different versions of corn. So like a lot of times, we say stuff like, Okay, so Americans only eat 16 different foods a year, right? 16 different foods. Nobody believes that. But 85% of what you have in your cart is wheat, dairy, soy, and corn. Like almost every ingredient in this product is just a version of corn, right? So modified cornstarch, which is genetically modified corn, which is Roundup. Then it has glucose, which is derived from genetically modified corn and Roundup. And then it has soy flour, which is genetically modified soy, and its pesticide is banned. And then it has salt. Mono and diglycerides, which again probably are petroleum in this. Cellulose gum, that's from trees, so that's okay. That's like sawdust. Cornstarch, which is genetically modified. God, that's crazy. And then natural and artificial flavors. Now, we talked about this last time, right? Natural flavors does not mean healthy. It just means that most of the ingredients in there are healthy. Or not necessarily, are natural occurring. But the artificial flavor, so we talked about that before. The studies in 2010 showed that decreased your brain growth. It made people dumber. And it's made from coal tar, which causes cancer. So, then sorbic acid. And then polysorbate 60. Now, polysorbate 60, that's like it used to be this long molecule, and I think it had the double bond at 60. But now it's made from petroleum. So now we have another petroleum product. Then we have, you'll never guess, but soy protein isolates, which means hexane gas, which is horribly toxic and cancer-causing, plus genetically modified soy and a banned pesticide. Calcium, sodium, caseinates. Now, caseinate, you have casein and whey are the two most allergenic components of dairy, and we have them both in here. Yes! All right, lots of inflammatory autoimmune conditions with that stuff. Then we have yellow number 5, and yellow number 5 decreases brain neurite growth by 3,000%, so it dumbs you down. And red 40 causes all kinds of things from cancer to allergies to decrease brain neurite growth. So, you should really have chronic inflammatory diseases with this. Like, that's exactly what should happen. And, you know, with Twinkies, nobody's surprised, I'm sure. But most people, I'm sure, are like, well, that's not that... I mean, how bad could it be? But it's like every single thing that's that bad. And, of course, if you feed this to children, the fastest time your child's brain will grow is in the first 5 years. And then it starts pruning off and dying. So the brain gets smaller as we get older because we don't use those parts, so we prune it. But people are feeding this stuff to their children at the prime of their development, which is why you get these behavior problems, why you get neurological problems, why you get all these kind of frustrating issues. And so, you know, that's why it's banned in other countries. Or they have warning labels. What about Oreos? Nobody's going to be surprised about Oreos, but let's look at Oreos. It does have chocolate in there. You know, it didn't even say what makes the chocolate. It just says chocolate. So guess what the number one ingredient in Oreos is? The number one. So we talked about bread. I mean, the last two is bread, and then, you know, it was grains, sugar, grains, sugar. What about Oreos? What do you think the number one ingredient in Oreos is? I figured it would be petroleum. But it's actually sugar. Sugar is the number one ingredient in an Oreo. Not flour, just sugar. The flour is holding it together. Alright, so sugar is genetically modified corn, which is inflammatory. Palm or palm kernel oil, not so bad. Or it could have canola, which is genetically modified rapeseed oil, which is bad. Bleached enriched flour. So then we're again, chlorine's messing up your thyroid. So Oreos should make you dumb, fat, and sick. And then we have enriched flour. So like flour's down there on this one. It's sugar, oil, then flour. And it's wheat flour, so again, should lots of Crohn's, IBS, all those kind of problems. Add those little vitamins back that are made from genetically modified gut bacteria. And it has cocoa, Now, cocoa is just cacao that's heated to 140 degrees, right? So that's very bitter. So that's when you see this natural and processed with alkali. So they alkalize this so it's not bitter. Then they add dextrose. So we had sugar at the very beginning, and we're back to sugar. So dextrose is sugar made from genetically modified corn. Then it has fructose, which is another sugar made from genetically modified corn. Then it has soy, which is genetically modified, and it has hexane gas in there. Then it has your baking soda and your phosphate, which is fine. A little salt, natural artificial flavors. So again, dumbing us down. And then it has artificial color, which then dumbs us down too. And then it has red food coloring, blue food coloring, which dumbs us down more. And it has chocolate. And chocolate is typically cacao plus sugar plus dairy. So this should cause IBS, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, eczema, psoriasis, allergies, asthma, bronchitis, migraines, and dumb you down, brain fog, memory loss. So, Oreos. And I gotta say, Oreos, they taste like petroleum now. Like when I was a kid, they tasted fabulous, but not now. What about, so you know the very first episode I ever did on this, okay? So we're at episode, 195. Episode 1, I went to the kitchen. I was in this big clinic. I went to the kitchen and I took a bunch of TV dinners out, and some of them theoretically healthy, and we read the ingredients and we talked about that, and then people got upset. So let's look at piñata beef enchilada dinner. Piñata beef enchilada. Piñata carne enchilada. That sounds better. Piñata carne enchilada. Is enchilada even a Mexican word? I don't know if that's true or not. Seems like American. Alright, so this is a thing that you get, where you heat it up in the microwave, which is horribly toxic. But let's see what this has in there. Alright, so the red chili sauce should be red chilies and vinegar and water, but let's see what they put in there. It's got water, that's pretty good. Shortening, which is beef fat, which is corn-fed beef, which is genetically modified, but it's horribly inflammatory. Very, very inflammatory. Almost 40 times more inflammatory for the person. So they should have lots of joint pain and stuff with this. And then cottonseed oil, which is lots and lots of pesticides. And why not add some paint thinner to it, right? So BHT is butyl toluene, I believe. Toluene is paint thinner, which is derived from benzene, which is what causes leukemia and lymphoma. So now we should get some lymphoma, some blood cancer, some childhood cancers out of this. And then bleached flour, which again, genetically modified. Or not, chlorine that messes up your thyroid. So this should make people dumb, fat, and sick. Flavorings, paprika. Hey, that's real. Cornstarch, which is genetically modified. Chili powder, which is healthy. Let's see what they made the chili powder out of. Chili pepper, salt, spices, garlic. I'm liking this so far. Soy sauce. What did they make the soy sauce out of? It's like a subcategory of a subcategory here. Hydrolyzed soy. So now we're talking about trans fat, genetically modified soy that uses a pesticide that's banned. Then salt, and then corn syrup solid, so back to fatty liver, and then that should cause weight gain, all kinds of problems. Yeast extract with MSG, so this beef burrito or enchilada dinner should cause decrease of brain growth by 8,000% and instant brain cell death when it crosses the blood-brain barrier, so it should really dumb you down. Partially hydrogenated soybean again, which is genetically modified trans fats. Salt. Beef base? What's the beef base, right? Drop the bass. I used to be in I started my rap career in the garden where I dropped the beat. So beef base, salt, soy, which is in genetically modified soybean, wheat, which is highly inflammatory, soybean, which is genetically modified, maltodextrin is genetically modified corn, caramel color, which is genetically modified corn, genetically modified soy, or coal tar, plus maltodextrin, which is genetically modified corn. Now, maltodextrin is sugar plus sugar plus sugar, right? Good Lord. And then yeast extract again, and then dextrose, which is sugar made from corn, food starch, which is made from corn, color, which is made from petroleum, silicon dioxide with sand. I mean, I put sand in my enchiladas, right? That's my secret ingredient. Corn oil, which is genetically modified, natural flavors, which maybe. All right, so that's just the sauce, right? So that's the red sauce. Now the tortilla is genetically modified corn with a trace of lime. That's healthy. The filling is beef with paprika, wheat textured protein. So that's genetically modified, or no, sorry, highly inflammatory. Then textured vegetable protein, which is soy, which is genetically modified. Caramel color, which is petroleum. Modified food starch, which is corn. And that's soy protein, which is genetically modified. Chili powder. God dang, this is crazy. We're back to the soy. That's a whole thing. The syrup solids. Yeast extract again, which decreases your brain growth by 8,000% for the third time. Partially hydrogenated, which is trans fat again. Guar gum, which is fine. Then we got pentos. Water, pinto beans. That sounds pretty good. Shortening, which is cottonseed oil. And, of course, add a little bit of antifreeze to that. Or no, sorry, paint thinner. Can't have beans without paint thinner in there. That would be crazy. And that, look, it makes it more stable. They add paint thinner to make it more stable. So that's good. If you get pissed off at your husband, he's talking a bunch of crap and giving you a bunch of trouble, you just stabilize the food for him with a little paint thinner. This is all terrible, but it's all the same stuff. This is what I'm saying. 16 different foods. You see the sauce is the same ingredients as the tortilla, as the fillings, as the rice. It's all the same crap, textured and flavored to be these different products. Which, by the way, I made. We have this new cookbook coming out this spring for eating your way out of anxiety, and I made the pinto beans from scratch, and I usually add a little bit of the Earth Balance butter to it, so it's non-dairy butter that looks and tastes like butter, and it's pretty good. But Sherry suggested that I didn't put that in there, and I was very suspicious about it, but it actually was really good. Like, it's very simple. Like, making your own refried beans, super duper healthy. Making refried beans for this, horribly toxic. So then we're back to more MSG. Then we have Spanish rice at the end. So you have your cooked rice, white rice, which is just sugar. So that should make you fat and suppress your immune system. Tomato paste, that's pretty good. Bell peppers, that's pretty good. Paprika. Modified food starch, so we're back to genetically modified corn or soy. And then onion and more vegetable oil, which is soybean, and canola, which are both genetically modified. And then sugar, because why not add sugar to it at the end, and some citric acid. And we talked about citric acid is created from black mold, which is racist, but it shouldn't harm you. It should be okay. So, should people who eat this TV dinner have lots of problems? I mean, lots and lots and lots of problems. But it's all probably genetic, so don't even worry about that. What about a Salisbury steak? Now, when I was a kid, my mom would make this Salisbury steak, right? And we usually ate beef. A steak, right? And then when steak would go bad, then they would grind it up, and then they would add seasoning and colors, and then that would be hamburgers, and then that was spoiled meat, right? But then they call that Salisbury steak, and then they eventually make hamburgers out of it. So, All right, so this is banquet TV dinner Salisbury steak, and the filling is water. That's pretty interesting that the number one ingredient in that is water. Water. That's more water than beef. I think you're getting screwed. It's got more water than meat. That's crazy. Okay, so then it has Salisbury steak. Well, what the hell is a Salisbury steak? Well, it's mechanically separated chicken, pork, beef, water, and soy, which is genetically modified, and some bleached flour, which is then messes up your thyroid, more bleached flour, which is messes up your thyroid, and then durum flour, which durum's maybe okay. And then dried yeast, which is the Saccharomyces cerevisiae, which is horribly inflammatory. Caramel color, which is petroleum or wheat or corn. Dextrose, which is sugar. Now, hey, this has that tripolyphosphate in there. That's that thing that they're adding that causes all kinds of weird problems in people when they add it to the meat to fatten it up when they process stuff in China. TSP. And then dextrose, which is genetically modified corn. Salt, spice, ground celery, rosemary. That's pretty good. Okay. So let's stop there, right? So mechanically separated all these things with a bunch of fillers in there, right? So basically it's a goddamn hot dog is what it is. It's all the throwaway meat at the end. They just grind it up, right? So this is like throwaway meat ground up with a whole bunch of flavors, bunch of wheat in there because you can't have a steak without meat or a steak without wheat, right? So then it's horribly inflammatory. So then we have textured vegetable protein because they don't put enough meat in there to make it meat. So they'll just add some textured protein in there, which is from genetically modified soy, to make it look like it's more meat than it really is. That's awesome. Caramel color, so that's coal tar. Rosemary, citric acid. Hey, it has potatoes in there. How do you make potatoes? Potatoes and calcium chloride. So the chloride in there actually disrupts your thyroid, and so the potatoes in that will make your mess up your thyroid, make you sick, fat, dumb. And then it has carrots, and look, carrots are nothing going on with them, just carrots. Modified cornstarch, which again, genetically modified corn. Seasoned cooked beef, which is like, it's a Salisbury steak. The beef is way down here on this ingredient list. And so it's beef, hydrolyzed soy protein. So they add more soy to the beef, where they already had a bunch of soy already added to every part of this goddamn thing. But then they're going to add more to fatten it up to make it look like it's more beef than it really is, I guess. And then soy protein, which is genetically modified. Garlic juice, which is, that's okay. Peas. You know, it's, yeah, okay. So peas, that's fine. Wheat flour, which is, again, highly inflammatory. All that gluten. And then xanthan gum is okay. Salt, hydrolyzed soy protein, so genetically modified trans fats. Sugar, which is genetically modified corn. Monosodium glutamate, which is MSG, which makes you dumber. It kills your brain cells, and it decreases brain growth by 8,000%. Flavor, what the hell is that? Probably petroleum. Now this has got propylethylene glycol in there, which is antifreeze. Obviously, you know, the last one, they had paint thinner in there. This one just uses a little bit of antifreeze, right? That's actually the similar ingredient to what they use to clean you out for a colonoscopy. So again, this should make you crap your pants. Caramel color. How many times can they put caramel color in this? That's the real question. Vegetable juice concentrates. So celery, carrots. Well, this sounds like a health food now. It's got leeks in there. Extracts of paprika. Oh, it's only getting better now. Tomatoes, onions, spice extractive. Spice extractive. Never seen that before. Citric acid. Not too shabby. Now, we should add a little crust to this. Wheat. Oh, here it comes. Okay. Wheat is in the crust, which is horribly inflammatory. then wheat flour, then lard with BHT. So here's our paint thinner. So we got a little bit of paint thinner in there and some antifreeze in there. So that's good. Dextrose, salt, and caramel color. Again, how many freaking times can you put caramel color in one product? Like, I get it, the whole thing's supposed to be a brown, pasty thing, but literally, like, how much of that can you put in there? So, this Salisbury steak should cause all kinds of brain fog, thyroid problems, inflammatory stuff, autoimmune stuff. Like, you should be super falling apart eating this stuff. Then, well, let's see, we have some... Yeah, Brianna says she used to love Oreos, can't stand them now. And Shauna goes, what? Hey, there's David. How you doing, man? So, that's Salisbury steak. What about some Trix cereal? When I was a kid, I loved Trix. My kids are old enough now, they're like, really pressure me to try to get them some Trix cereal or some Fruit Loops or some crap like that, but I won't do it. So they don't care what I have to say about all this, but otherwise, just lots of fruits and berries. You can eat all you want, but we're not buying that stuff. So ingredients for Trix cereal. Now, Trix is kid-tested mother... No, that's Kix. Kix? Trix? Kix? Kix is kid-tested mother-approved? Yeah. Trix... I feel like there's a saying. Oh, Trix are for kids. Yeah. And you realize that we didn't have really... not all these cereals are new, right? What's crazy is before 1940 we didn't have cereal because Dr. Kellogg, Dr. Graham hadn't invented steamed or rolled oats and cornflakes yet, right? So no cereal. People just ate real food for breakfast. Then they created cereal. Men went to war for World War II. Women went to work in the war factory. There was a sudden need for instant food. Cereal filled that. Suddenly we needed milk instead of water because water sucks and milk's a bunch of morphine. So then all these kids were loving that. So the kids are all getting doped up in the morning with some morphine and a bunch of sugar. And then they found that the kids were their biggest customers. So then they started creating cartoon characters and lots of food coloring, which decreases brain growth, causes learning disorders. And that's where we've seen, like, from the 1970s. Well, 1964 is when the American IQ plummeted for the first time. Has never recovered, which we're one of the dumbest countries in the world now. Only 22nd, right? Least we have the confidence of number one, right? It's just, So, we are the 22nd smartest country in the world. So our IQ plummeted. A bunch of scientists went to the U.S. Senate and testified and said, hey, all these artificial colors made from petroleum are neurotoxic and they're dumbing our population down. And then we said, that's fine. Just don't worry about it. So we are creating some of the dumbest people in the world now. If you ever traveled around, I've spent a lot of time on Facebook, you know what I'm talking about. So, let's see how this cereal might dumb us down. Have a bunch of erratic, ADHD, ADD, minimal brain dysfunction, learning disorder children, right? The first ingredient in this is corn. Whole grain corn. Whole grain, that's got to be good, right? And it's not gluten, so this is gluten-free. This is basically health food right here. So that corn is highly inflammatory, 40 times more inflammatory than not, or whatever, right? So that corn should increase hypertension, high blood pressure, irregular heartbeat, more clots, more heart attack, more stroke, and then every inflammatory condition should be increased with this. Then it has sugar, which is derived from corn. So we have corn, then we have sugar from corn, which is genetically modified. Then we have rice flour. Well, hell, that's even healthier too, right? A bunch of white rice, right? So we got inflammatory corn and a bunch of white rice, which is just instant sugar. Then we have corn syrup, which is sugar, but it's also genetically modified corn. So we got genetically modified corn, sugar corn, sugar rice, and then sugar corn and fatty liver disease. And then we have canola. And the canola here again is genetically modified rapeseed oil. Do you guys see? I mean, if you guys have been listening this whole time, like it's the same goddamn ingredients over and over and over and over and over and over. People like literally do not believe they're only eating 16 different foods a year. That whole giant shopping cart is the same goddamn ingredients, just textured and flavored to be different products. We are so poisoned, so poisoned. So, canola. My job is so easy and so hard. You're just like, all these people are like, I keep poisoning myself and I don't feel good. Like, I have some ideas for you. So, genetically modified rapeseed oil. Typically, I try to stay away from any food group that includes the word rape in there. So, genetically modified rapeseed oil is canola. Then we have salt. And that's the 6th ingredient is salt. Then trisodium phosphate. So that's our TSP again. That's the stuff that they add to the stuff in China that fattens stuff up, and it messes people up. I have some weird reactions for patients with that. And then we have natural flavor, and then we have artificial flavor. The artificial flavor is cancer-causing coal tar to make it taste like something. Red food coloring decreases brain growth. Yellow decreases brain growth. Blue decreases brain growth. And other colors that decrease brain growth. So not only do you have one, but we're going to have a whole bunch of different things that decrease your brain growth from 3,000 to 8,000% in here. What could go wrong? Then we'll put some citric acid, malic acid to add a little flavor. Other than that, we got a bunch of added little synthetic crappy vitamins in there. So, should kids be hyperactive? Yes. Literally, these colors are banned in those countries that don't have ADHD, right? Should it cause learning disorders? Absolutely. We saw from 1977 to 1991, learning disorders go up 191%, right? We are literally causing every child to have learning disorders. And then, of course, behavioral problems, all that. It's the same. It's the same. Plus, it's all inflammatory, so the kids should have asthma and allergies and irritable bowel and Crohn's and all kinds of problems. So then when people turn in their 20s and 30s and they're like, why am I falling apart? You were raised on falling apart. Is that it? That's all I got? That's perfect timing. All right. So next week, what we should do... now, next week, I'll be in Cancun. So, I'm going to Cancun, and then we're going to Playa del Carmen, and then Cozumel, and then we're going to Tulum. Tulum's the big place. So, everybody wants to go to Tulum, right? So, I'm going to Tulum. And Tulum is dope. So, we're going to do cave swimming, jungle hiking, all kinds of crazy stuff. You know, swim with the sea turtles. You know how it is. So, we'll do a whole bunch of that. So, Tuesday, I should be just getting in. And so, I'll probably do one. We'll do another show. We might change the topic because I'll be gone. We might do it on something interesting. Maybe at the beach. We'll see how the Wi-Fi is. Alright. That'll be episode 196. 196. All right, you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Again, it probably sounded horrible because it's just repeating the same stupid stuff over and over and over and over and over again. I mean, we picked widely different products, and they're all the same ingredients. I hope you understand that. Like, so when you have these people that are just like, well, you know, a little paint thinner, what's the harm in that? Well, there's a little paint thinner in the sauce, and then the meat, and then the gravy, and the other stuff, and then the cereal, and then this and that. Like, what the hell? How much paint thinner can you eat before you get sick? How much food coloring can you feed your children until they can't function? Right? It is this easy to fix the most complex problems. But requires knowing how physiology works, knowing what we do to mess it up, and teaching people to stop messing it up. So, fun. So maybe episode 5 next week, or we'll do a little change up depending on kind of how Wi-Fi and everything is there. So, otherwise, thank you guys. I really appreciate it. Talk to you soon.